Welcome to Project Catalyst, an economic development podcast. I'm Tina Emerson, Chief Marketing Officer here at Maynard Nexsen. I'm joined today by Tushar Chikhliker. He is the Economic Development Practice Group Leader here at the firm. Good to see you, Tushar.
Nice to see you, Tina.
We are excited today to have our friend with us, Jason Giulietti. He is the new President and CEO of the Central SC Alliance. Jason joined Central SC in September of 2023. He's responsible for overseeing the execution of Central SC's mission to recruit jobs and capital investment to the region and from around the world. And prior to Columbia, Jason was president and CEO of the Greater San Marcos Partnership in Texas. Welcome, Jason. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate being here with you.
Absolutely, Jason. So just out of the gate, why Central SC Alliance?
Sure.
I certainly know a bit about that process, but you know, you're an incredibly experienced economic developer. You've worked in different parts of the country.
Yep.
You've run alliances very similar to Central SC Alliance, and I'm certain that you had other opportunities that you were potentially pursuing. Why did you ultimately decide on South Carolina, but particularly the Central SC Alliance?
Sure. No, I'll start big picture, and then thank you for the question to open it up. And it's exciting to be here in South Carolina, certainly. You know, I love to fish where the fish are. That's the best way to describe it to you guys, right? In economic development, the last place you want to be is where the fish aren't, right? So you want to be in a place where you at least know you have an opportunity to make a difference and truly impact your community. So as I was exploring what was next, having done some incredible things back in Texas, really bringing the organization into the next chapter of its existence, I wanted to find a place where we could dig in and finally put some deep roots in the ground and in exploring opportunities. My wife's only requirement to me is that we stay in the South. We love the South. Our people are in the South. I will tell you, and it's where economic development is happening, right, around the country. So in finding that, we looked at opportunities, and this opportunity here in Central South Carolina resonated for many reasons. One, it is where the fish are. The South Carolina has demonstrated it is a player in economic development and will continue to be. What I think was most attractive was I feel like when I hear that, it can always be better. And that's where I step in and say, let me impart some of my philosophies into what's happening and take it to that next level. Central was an organization that, in talking to you guys during the interview process, I found fascinating, right? Its history, being 30 years old this year, and looking at what lies ahead of us and where we had been and what the organization wanted to be, right? It had a beautiful upstart, kind of gone through some bumps in the road, but now it's at a place where there was really an opportunity to galvanize the community and the counties and the region to truly put the organization back up on that mantle it should be. And knowing that's really my secret sauce is coming in, galvanizing constituencies, and then bringing forward results that just shock people, quite honestly. That's what I do. That's the only thing I know how to do. I made sure as we were talking through our process that it wasn't going to scare anybody because I feel I am a strong personality in that way. But when you are ready for it, all I say is buckle up and let's go, right? And that's kind of what this opportunity presented. Far better than the other things, because as you mentioned, there were things that same week, there were 3 other opportunities that came together. And it was just, where do we want to be? And we found South Carolina as just a beautiful place to be, a great spot to raise our kids. You know, we're in a place now that kids need continuity for the next, good 10 years at least. And I wanted to be in a place where I could truly move that needle. And all those boxes were checked by coming to South Carolina and Central. So excited to be here with everybody and know that we've already, the plane's already off the ground. I call off the tarmac. We're off and running to show this community what we mean by what I'm talking about by coming here.
Well,
so
we are ecstatic that you and your family made that decision.
Thank you.
and the plane is definitely flying. I've seen it firsthand. I know others have seen it as well. And we are all looking forward to being passengers for a very long time.
Awesome. That's where we want to be. So it's great.
And you talk about galvanizing the community, and you have several communities to galvanize, right? So how does this multi-county partnership effectively work?
Sure. So it's a fascinating thing. It's something I've prided myself. I love being in these kind of community partnerships and regional alliances. Our organization is 8 counties and the capital city. So a lot of nuances, a lot of layers there, a lot of people that expect you to only work for them, right? It's what it is, but I thrive in it. And I think being a stronger organization comes with a larger geography and more representation and diversity of those you're partnering with. So in doing that, you really got to understand the value proposition for each community. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And then you give them that information so they understand what your organization is going to do to better help their success. And in doing that with Central, it has been one that's been fascinating because we represent where we sit right now. The capital city of Columbia has very, very different needs than our partners to the north and south in Kershaw and Clarendon County, for example, that are very rural communities. So we have to redefine that value proposition in how we deliver our services to those communities and making sure we're offering them the value proposition that best fits them. So in Columbia, we're going to go out and attract white collar jobs. Those white collar jobs, yes, they can go in all of the other 8 counties, but they're better suited for a place like Columbia for a variety of reasons. But Columbia, on the flip side, is not going to see a manufacturer like Scout Motors decide to put their manufacturing facility in the city limit. So we have to create that balance, but it's strength. In economic development, the more choices you can give a project, the stronger you become on the other side of it. So for us, 8 counties presents us 8 solutions in one city, solutions all the time to a potential prospect. And that's what the strength really comes down to, is that we need to provide you that solution, and the more options we have for you, the better. So we can prove it up all day, what works, but I think that's really the secret ingredient of a regional partnership, is being able to offer the variety to your customer and to your partner when you're trying to do business attraction and grow the region.
And Jason, being the CEO of an economic development alliance is a very different job than being an economic developer, say for a county or maybe for a state Department of Commerce or state Department of Economic Development. What are your core principles in how you run Central SC Alliance within the the organization, but also how does that extend beyond the walls of the organization to working with investors, but also in recruiting business and industry?
No doubt. Great question, and thank you. And those that know me, that have heard me on the ground here for the last 6-7 months, will probably be nauseated by hearing the same thing. But it's the key principles of accountability. One, you have to put yourself out there, share what you're going to do, and then truly live by what you're doing. And holding yourself accountable and your organization accountable to deliver the results that you're telling people you're going to achieve. Critical function. Authenticity is the other. One that's really there. Economic development has evolved, I would say, over the last 10, 15 years. It's really become a different industry than it was. And authenticity means more than ever is a core principle, because you cannot pretend you're something you're not. When you're bringing a company in here, it used to be put on the dog and pony show, take them to the fanciest restaurant you could find, show them all the great things, and hide everything that was bad. That's the last thing you want to be doing in this type of environment to attract a project. So we pride ourselves on authenticity. We're not going to hide the bad stuff. We're going to show you the good, and we're going to show you the bad. We're going to talk about the great things, and we're going to talk about where there's challenge, but you're a solution company that wants to come here. You will help us get to that next level. It's that same thing in a public-private partnership, right? Telling our investors, telling our partners who we are, and truly living it. The last piece and the other function that I talk about all the time is transparency. Transparency is critical. In economic development, it's kind of a word most folks avoid because, there's a lot of secrecy. We operate in code names, and we operate in this world where we can't share a lot of details. I've always thought that's a little silly, and I share everything. I share everything except the company and the confidentiality of things I can't. But I can share probably 90% of what I have, and that's kind of what we've done as an organization. We've opened the hood, I call it, of the car and shown people what's going on. We actually do now bi-monthly meetings where we bring all of our stakeholders to the table, everybody, and sort of share what's going on. What does our pipeline look like? What does it look like by requirement? What does it look like by industry? It really helps inform our partners, better understand what we're doing and how it's going to impact them. If they understand the industries we're seeing most attracted to our region, they can make some decisions organizationally. If they see the size requirements, if you're in the real estate world, it can maybe lead to a new spec building. It can lead to something else that arms us with more tools in our toolkit to go out and better effectively do this. So that's really where I see those core principles coming into fruition and stuff we live by. Quite honestly, the team knows it, our investors know it, and we continue to share with the community. We want to be held that unaccountable. I want the person on the street to know we exist, what we're doing, and what we're doing to change their lives, and them to come up and ask what we're doing. Because I will tell you all day what we're doing and how they can help. So that's what we do, and those are the principles we live by.
Well, I don't think you can ever hear core principles enough, so good for you. So you're about 6 months in, right,
Yes.
since September. And what are you seeing on the horizon for the Central SC region, and what sectors do you think we need to be focusing on?
Sure. So this region is blessed with having some tremendous opportunities. We had a tremendous win right before I got here with Scout Motors. Game changer for the region, 4,000 plus jobs, $2 billion in capital investment. It's going to be a game changer for this region. And quite honestly, the last piece of the puzzle for South Carolina, right? Having Volvo to our south, BMW to our north, and now having that last leg of the equation put together, it's great. But it's not everything, right? We cannot be wed to one industry. And economic development, one of those core principles, again, is making sure that we're diversified in our economies. So I see this region really having opportunity to go after more life science. I really do think that's a space for us. We have some key assets that are in our region that are thriving. How do we leverage that a little bit more? A little bit more in the energy space. You know, the state was awarded a federal designation for a technology hub in the energy space. One of only 31 in the country. It's a huge designation and one that we need to take advantage of in economic development. If the federal government thinks we are the battery destination for the future, we know the industry thinks batteries in every vertical are essential to the future. How do we go out and make sure that we're attracting that type of industry to this region? And then when I look at our region even broader, I see tremendous opportunity in the city of Columbia. We have some great employers here that we can quite honestly partner with. When I think of our partners like a Blue Cross Blue Shield, who sits here with 17,000 employees, they're innovating all the time. So what can I do? We can go out and talk to them, find out their areas of innovation, and then go out and use those innovation areas to go out and attract complements to what they're doing. We can go out to California, for example, which is a great place to relocate companies from, and say, hey, we need this innovation to happen in our backyard because one of our largest employers is doing it. And if we all of a sudden make a marriage, that company says, you know what, let me get out of that high cost area, come to a great place to live, but also to operate my business. And over time, they now have a built-in partner. And who knows, maybe Blue Cross absorbs that company and that's great. But those entrepreneurs that started the company, they're not going to want to work for the big guy. They're going to go out and spin out and create another company. And now all of a sudden we have an ecosystem of white collar jobs that transforms Columbia and quite honestly spreads to our neighbors and spreads to the state. So I think there's so many different areas and so many different aspects that we can weave into, and that's kind of where we're going.
So again, being the president and CEO of an economic development alliance, you've got investors that are on the public sector side. You've got investors that are on the private sector side. Putting aside the different geographies of
Sure.
all of the individuals or entities I just mentioned, naturally, an organization like yours survives and runs off of contributions from all of these partners that I just mentioned and others. How do you define return on investment for all of those partners that really want to see this organization move forward? How do you define return on investment for those individual partners? And maybe is it different for a public sector partner than a private sector partner?
Great question. I love it because that's at its core why I've always been in a public-private model. I think keeping your eye on the prize of return on investment, that what you just said in those three words is critical for somebody in my seat to make sure never loses direct sight to every single partner. So how do we define it as an organization? Well, to our public sector partners, it's making sure they truly understand we're a resource. We're there to provide them what they're looking for. Could mean a variety of things depending on the community, but one that intersects all of them is lead generation, right? Bringing them more opportunities to see a company that could be an employer that can operate in their community. So what do? We go out and spend time and resources to go out and make sure we're finding those companies that match our communities. So we work with third parties, we work firsthand, we travel the world to go do this, and are ultimately that frontline salesperson that goes out, and I say, we're not a project person and manager per se that we're getting into the weeds, but we're qualifying the lead. We're making sure we're defining that right opportunity, we're finding out what their needs are, and then we're saying, 8 counties, here you go. Here's the bucket of leads. Everybody go at them. We're here to help you. Do whatever you need to close that lead, but ultimately it's back on those communities. So we provide them that qualified lead and spend a lot of resources to do that. The other thing we do for direct return for them is market, right? Their resources to market their individual communities are small and it's hard to do at scale. Well, that's what our organization does. We ultimately go out there and tell the story of our communities. And we do it through, right now, we're actually hiring a national public relations firm to go out there and get and tell these stories, but get them placed in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Inc., Airport Lounge magazines, you name it. Forget paying for media. I think it's a complete waste of time. I think earning media and showing the world what you're doing through real stories ultimately changes the game. So our public sector partners see that return. And to that same point, our private sector partners see that return as well. On the private side, it's a little harder because we don't have a give and get kind of concept. They're supporting a very broad mission that ultimately they'll derive benefit by us being successful attracting a company. The more customers we bring to the table, they're potential clients of theirs, and that continues to spawn more and more economic growth. So they get a benefit, although it's a little bit more intangible. But we try to show them we're going to give you every opportunity to essentially partner with us on these opportunities. So when we travel the world, we bring our private sector partners with us. Come tell the story. Who better than a business leader that's running a company to tell the story of our region, right? For me, they're going to expect me to say the most greatest things on the planet all day long, which we will. But our business leaders, we tell them, going back to what we talked about before, authenticity. Tell them what it's like. If it's bad, tell them it's bad. If it's great, tell them it's great. Because ultimately, that level of accountability and transparency all of a sudden builds trust. And that trust says, wait a minute, you're actually telling me the truth. The rest of these guys and gals that I've been talking to, they tell me it's all roses and beautiful. And then I get there and it's nothing like what they said. Well, we tell you how it is. So when you get here, you know what you're getting. And we're going to be there to make sure we enable and empower your success by covering everything. So the return on investment is ensuring that we're providing every bit of information we can to let our private sector partners know what we're doing, how they can be part of the equation. They can help us in a lot of different ways. And then our public sector partners continue to see this through the opportunities that we give to them. And we take it even one step further. I'll give you one more. On the public sector side, our team is not just here as a resource that you can pick up the phone and call at any point in time. I think that's a little bit old school. Instead, we're going to our communities. We're going to their offices and saying, we're just going to partner up with you for the day. We're going to hang out. We have plenty of work we can do, but you know what? By being there, all of a sudden, the workload that they say, we're good, we don't need you. All of a sudden, when you're sitting next to them, you're partnering with them. You're working on things, you're hearing things, and you're helping them far more than they even realized, right? And that's kind of what our model is the more we can be extensions of their teams, partners to enable their community success, the stronger our organization would be. Same with our private sector. Those depth of resources that are not in their toolkit, well, they're in ours, and we certainly can bring them to bear to help our communities.
And your focus on authenticity and transparency is incredibly, it seems simple, but it's not simple in economic development, right?
Very true.
It's not the natural thing to do, especially with a community that's trying, or an area that's trying to recruit business and industry. But these companies are very, very bright. They're very sophisticated.
That's right.
Whether they be small or large. And they know that it's not perfection anywhere in the world. That's right. And so by failing to talk about maybe some of the areas in which we are a little weaker, that becomes obvious to them. And so I think your approach is spot on, and that's where private sector, experiences can come into play. And I know you've been focusing a lot more. The organization's been supercharged since you got here, and that's exactly what we wanted. And I know that's exactly what this region has been clamoring for some time now. And so, what are some of the things that you are doing on the private sector side to leverage some of the experiences from the private sector? But also, I've seen a lot of activity already on things like missions and other things that you've been doing across the country. Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about this supercharging aspect as it comes to the private sector.
Yeah, I think that the private sector in economic development is always overlooked. It's always overlooked. It's thank you for your resources. Now stay away until we announce a project. I think that's the exact opposite approach that you should take. So we pull the private sector very, very close. And the reason we do that is, one, I have a mantra that everybody hears, that time kills all deals, right? In economic development, we can drag out deals forever. And nobody's making money, nobody's bringing jobs, nobody's changing lives if it takes forever. So by what we do, we go to the private sector and say, you guys have incredible depth of experience. You have expertise on your teams and resources that we will never have. But what we can leverage is your environmental expertise, your geotechnical expertise, your construction expertise, your job hiring expertise, all those things that we need to be generalists in as economic developers, but we need to be able to pull in those folks when we have deals. So we'll bring every one of those folks to the table when we're in deal flow. We'll bring them in from the very, very beginning, because the more we bring you in the beginning, all those leaves we're trying to unturn and find out what's going on underneath, now I have experts helping you better understand it so that when we get to the end, everything's clear. The path is crystal clear how you're going to get to the end. And now you have a built-in bunch of experts that have helped you. They didn't sell you on anything. They just simply told you, here's what we would do. Here's what we would do to help make you successful. Now go off on your own, hire whoever you want. And my private sector loves it because 9 out of 10 times they're going to call back and say, hey, you were incredibly helpful. can you help us now officially in this capacity? And what it did was take that deal from what would have been a year, maybe it shrinks it down to 6 months, because all those hurdles that they had to overcome, they already know. They already know what the issues with the site are, or what's going on in that building, or what's happening in the workforce and where to find their people, because we've addressed that at the beginning. So we pull the private sector in for those reasons. And the private sector, of course, loves it. They would love to be at the table. And my whole thing is I just make sure they understand. You're there as a resource. You're
Correct.
not there to sell your services. You're there as a resource. There'll be a time to get those services sold. And by being that trusted partner, you ultimately are going to be that vendor of choice when it comes time. So,
well, it elucidates the path for companies.
That's right.
To get to production, to get to, making money.
Which is what they're there for, right?
Which is what they're there for. And so once the path is elucidated, then it's a simple journey of going down the path.
That's right.
And so, but I think to your point, illustrating what that path looks like is it requires, in the most clear way, it requires public sector participation without question, but also private sector to be able to advise on some of the other things that might not be obvious.
That's right. And they always come up. So the more we can do it, the better.
And I think that's a perfect segue to my next question. It really just looks like economic development, and you know this, Tushar, too, it's a team sport. You've got folks you go visit them in their small towns and you sit with them and see what these places have to offer. You listen to their stories, you listen to the successes, and that just informs your work. And then you bring in the private sector and everybody is working in one big happy family toward one goal together. Tell me about that team play when you have to bring everyone together from the public and private sector to really work on something that is really imminent for us.
So I can't underscore that enough, how important being a team sport economic development is. And a lot of folks say it these days. Do they really practice it? That might be a little questionable. I think what we try to do is really practice it. And I'll share some examples of that. One, it's amazing how the site selection process works. I'm sure Tushar can share stories and has shared stories about going in, finding a community that might look good on paper, right? And coming in a day early to go visit that community, or going in the night before for dinner. And guess what? You're talking to that waiter or waitress all day long and just getting a better feel for what you see on paper. If that waiter or waitress is down on the community, talking about how bad this is and bad that is, that's terrible, right? That no matter how much the next day we present amazing things, that leaves an impression. I mean, I did it here when I was looking at this opportunity. I went and spent time with local folks and just got a feel. So it's so important we take it all the way down to that team sport level, bringing it to the everyday person. The everyday person has to realize they are one of our biggest cheerleaders. So we have to educate them, one, on what's going on here. They don't even realize what's in their backyard. And some places in the country are prideful about where they live, and they tell you about it all day long. Other places don't. But those that do win more projects. I'll tell you right now, they do, because everybody's on the team. So for us, we try to really, one, educate our general residents on what's going on in this world, why it's important and what we're trying to do for them, and then take that up a notch into other organizations that folks don't often think of in economic development. But we partner with the United Way. We partner with social service organizations. We want environmental groups. I mean, we'll take everybody, because we all are going after the same thing. We might say it a little differently. We might do different things. My lane is the one thing, but I need them on the highway with me at the lane right next door, because they're going the same place I am. That's critical. So for us, those folks are champions and cheerleaders and doing things that are going to help us, and us doing things that will help them. So the more we continue to make that effort and team effort, the better we'll be. I mean, the state for a whole does economic development very top down, right? So if you look at it, our Department of Commerce, who are great folks, really are looked at as that lead agency. We view ourselves, again, in partnership with folks like that, right? So what they're doing, we want to complement and make sure, again, we're on that highway with them going in that same direction. But it cuts across everybody. Everybody's got to be a partner, and they have to understand they really are truly a partner. They're not just there to put their name on the website and they're a partner. No, you're actually coming to the table with us. We're inviting you to things, and we'd love to be at your things as well. And in my short time here, I've been to those organizations. I've actually been invited, and I go. I go to those things to support their stuff, and they're coming to our stuff. And it really does. It transforms the relationship when you do that. And one last thing I'll share on this topic, because I truly believe it and I live it, I'm getting my staff to live it, is, economic development is a lifestyle. It is not a job. And what I mean by that is, to your point, when you mentioned understanding your community, well, one of our communities, they use Newberry, has an Oktoberfest, right? And we do work with Germany. Well, it's one thing to know we have an Oktoberfest and go to Germany and say, hey, we have an Oktoberfest. It's another thing to go with your family or our team go up there and experience it. So then when we go to Germany and talk about it, well, we can talk about it from the perspective of actually being part of the community. So it's not living in a different world and knowing what's going on. It's actually being part of the community, being in the fabric of what makes this place great, and then being able to use that to go tell the story and convince companies essentially why this is a great place to operate, why it's a great place to live. But you only get there by actually being involved in part of that fabric.
And that's the authenticity that
There you go.
preach about,
There you
right?
go. It all goes together,
Absolutely.
hopefully, right?
Jason, your energy and passion is infectious. It really is. And thanks again for selecting Central SC Alliance.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
We all look forward to working with you, and it goes far beyond the walls of the room we're sitting in right now to really take this organization and this part of South Carolina into really maximize the potential that we know that it has.
No doubt. And I set the bar. We want to be the best economic development organization in the country, bar none. That's the bar, right? So we'll get there whenever we get there. And when we do, it's not going to be good enough. We got to keep going, right? Our residents expect that of us, and our state expects that of us, and that's where we'll go. But thank you.
Elevate.
That's
Elevate.
Oh, yes, and we appreciate you being here today. I feel like I just drank a pot of coffee, and I love it. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you for being with me, Tushar.
It's always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time on Project Catalyst. Project Catalyst, an economic development podcast, is a Maynard Nexon and NP Strategy production. To learn more about the podcast and subscribe, visit thecatalystpod.com or find us on your favorite podcast platform.